All right, let's talk about chord spelling and practical chord spelling, how you can build your own chords on the fretboard and understand where they come from. So today we're going to spell a dominant 7 chord, and a dominant 7 chord is the chord that's written with a 7 after it, right? D7, A7, G7, whatever the case is. It functions as a dominant chord. More on that later. So here we go. Let's just take a look at a basic A major chord in 5th position. And the spelling of this chord is root 5, root 3, 5, and root again. And that chord is derived from the A major scale. All right. But when we play a 7 chord, let's see what happens when we compare a 7 chord against this A major chord. And keeping in mind that chords come from scales. So the note here that's sticking out is this one right here. And that's called the 7th. But it's not the 7th that takes place in the major scale, which, as you can see, is a G sharp, G sharp A. But when we play an A7, it's that 7th there, a G natural. So if you're comparing it to an A major scale, we'd have to call that 7th a flat 7 or a lowered 7. Now, if we want to take chords out of scales, which we do, we have to develop a scale that the 7th chord can be derived from. And so, as we just discovered, in order to make a 7th chord happen out of a major scale, we have to lower the 7th degree of the scale. Let's lower the 7th degree of an A major scale. So each of those was a 7th in a different octave. G down here. G, G, all right, and there's my 7 chord. Now it sounds perfectly like it sounds like the chord is coming out of that scale, right? It certainly does. But now we can no longer call that scale an A major scale, obviously, because we've altered a note in that scale. The note we altered was the 7th. We had to lower it a semitone in order to derive a 7th chord from that scale. The scale we now have is no longer a major scale, A major scale. It is an A Mixolydian mode. A Mixolydian mode is a scale that has a flat 7. Everything else is exactly the same as a major scale except for that lowered 7th. And it's much better it makes a lot more sense to think of an A7 chord as being derived from A Mixolydian than it does to think of an A7 chord, is derived from an A major scale by lowering the 7th degree, which it just is another step, and it just really takes too long. So there's a chord spelling thing for you, and I'm just working from this 1 chord form right now. And now let's expand on this chord form a little bit. An A7 chord is a 4-note chord. Any 7 chord is a 4-note chord. The notes in this chord are A, C sharp, E, and G. So there are 4 notes in that chord. Very often, there's a note eliminated in 4-note chords when you're breaking them down into abbreviating them, and that's what we're going to do right here, right now. So we can have this big chord form like this, Or let's break down this chord form a little bit. Here's one breakdown. So there's my root, there's my 7, and there's my 3. That works great. Here's my 7, here's my 3, and now I've got the root down an octave. Let's try a different inversion. Let's get rid of the root, put the 7 down here, 3 here, and put the 5 back in the chord. Now I have flat 7, 3, and 5. You can see how clear, right? It's just like a little chunk of that chord there, right? Let's try another one. 5, 7, and 3. And no root in this case, right? Same thing here, no root in this case. The root's implied, right? You can, you sort of, it'll be implied, musically implied. And then here, dominant 7 again, 5, flat 7 and 3. And let's put the root back in again. Root, 3, and flat 7. All right, now there are others. I could do this one, 3, 5, and flat 7. But that's a bit of a stretch. How about these? I'll just play the practical ones. And then they all come from that big one, if you want to look at it that way. That 6-note form, the abbreviations of that big form, and from our Mixolydian mode. Right. The Mixolydian mode is different from the major scale in that it has a lowered 7th degree.